Well, welcome to Before 30. This is Auntie Jeannine.
And Nephew Trey's in the building.
And it is a good day. Happy Wednesday.
It is. It is. I'm so excited for today. It's just there's actually some sunshine out here in Atlanta. So the weather,
Finally.
yes, the weather's really nice.
I know, because we probably shouldn't complain too much because our friends in Texas and
I know.
Louisiana have had a hard time. However, I don't live there. So so it's been so cold here. But I
Yes, it
do have a lot
has.
of friends and family in Texas, and they did have a challenging week last week.
Yeah, some of our team members are working remote with the photography business. So one person in particular, I know she was out of electricity, but her house was, they used gasoline, so they were able to still cook in their fireplace. But she said it's pretty sad, just definitely keeping everyone out there, everyone
Yeah.
affected by it in our thoughts and our prayers.
That's a good thing they had a fireplace because what most people don't know is if you have a gas stove, you still got it still has to have an electrical spark for the gas to come on. So you can't typically use your stove if the power
Yeah.
is out. But so I'm glad they had it. And I had
Yeah.
a friends like that, Jasmine. She had to go be with her parents. Too
Oh,
bad for her.
really?
But they had a house full of food. She was happy. She said she slept the entire time. So my niece was doing just fine down in Texas. But a lot of people, I didn't understand that whole rolling power thing. I know they
Mm.
do that in California when it's too hot and there's fires and stuff. But they would have like rolling power. It'd be on for 40 minutes, it'd go off, and then it'd be on in another area of
Oh,
town.
okay.
So
That's nice.
even when we had our snowstorm back here, were you still living here when they had the snowstorm
I
here
did. I
in
did. I lived, yeah, short story. I lived 2 miles away from the office, so I wasn't really impacted. I was able to get home
Mm.
quickly and safely, but a lot of my coworkers, they have just crazy stories. That's another,
Yeah,
another
I guess
story for
that
another
is
day.
right. I got home. It took me 2 hours, but what I
Oh,
was gonna
wow.
say about that is though we had bad weather. I don't think we lost power
Mm,
the way they did in Texas, but
yeah.
yeah. So spring is what, like 4 5 weeks away. So I'm happy about that. I cannot believe that we are at the end of the month. Can you believe this is the last Wednesday in February?
Time is flying in 2021.
What?
It is
And remember, I
flying.
said the year didn't start for me until till February 1st.
Exactly. And look at it. We're already 2 months
I
in.
know, already 2 months in, but I'm excited about this. Although this month is, we're at the end of this month. I
Yep.
always say February is my second favorite month after June, because our birthdays are in June.
Yep.
So June is always our favorite month, but February is for me is one of my second favorites. I know you don't buy into the love and Valentine's Day.
Listen to our previous episode to hear, Nephew's Trey's thoughts on that. So yeah, I just do it a
Yeah,
little differently. Not that I don't believe in it. We just do it different.
yeah. You don't want to be pressured by the man. But what I do love is that, it's a time for us, even if you don't want to say, okay, this is the only time in the year I'm going to do this, but we're taking part of this month to focus on relationships and dating. And love and relationships and
Absolutely.
situationships and all these other
Because it's
things.
cold. This is a cold month. So,
What do they call that when people bundle up together? What is it?
oh
Y'all still
Lord,
doing that?
y'all, I can't, what is it? It's called, it's going to slip my mind. It's going to come back to me.
It's some sort of term like
Yeah.
cuddle buddies. Is it
Yeah, not
cuddle
cuddle
buddies
buddy.
or
Am I aging
something?
myself right now?
Yeah, you're aging
It's
yourself.
going to come to me, and it's going to right be
Yeah.
in the middle of the podcast, and it's going to come to me.
So I hope y'all didn't get dumped before Valentine's Day. And they trying to come back and pick it up. But we're gonna talk about some really great stuff. We have
I'm excited.
an expert on the show today. She is not only is she beautiful, she is brilliant and talented, and she's gonna tell us all about love and relationships.
Yes, and I am
That's a
super
lot of pressure.
excited. I'm super excited for personal reasons. So full disclaimer out there. The person that we have on our show as our guest, she is actually the therapist for my wife and I prior to us being married. She helped us go through our premarital counseling and couples counseling. So I'm super, super, super excited to have her on the show. And so just to give y'all a little bit of background about her name is Dr. Tameca, and Dr. T. That's for her love of tea. She's passionate about helping women live lives that are whole, authentic, fulfilling, and free. Dr. Tameca provides sex therapy, sexuality education, and mental health services for women and persons in relationship. She received her bachelor's degree in counseling from Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, where she also minored in women's studies. And she received her master's degree in social work from the University of Maryland at Baltimore. And she received her PhD in human sexuality education from Widener University in Chester, PA. Everybody, family, welcome Dr. Tameca to Before 30.
Thank
Hello,
you.
hello.
Hi, thank you. Thank you both. I'm so happy to be here.
We are
Great to
excited to
have you.
have you. And so,
Thank
although Trey called her Dr. Tameca, she is cousin Tameca, uh, but Dr.
I
Tameca
love it.
in Harris Jackson. So, and we're going to have information where you can reach her on both the podcast and you'll get some other information on social media. So, if you're in the Orlando area, you can reach out to her and schedule with
Yes.
her, which leads me to my first question. Tell us a little bit about your practice, what you do. Are you licensed outside of the state of Florida? How does all of that work?
Yeah. Excellent question. And so my practice, yes, it's located in Central Florida. I'm licensed in Florida. So I actually provide services to people not only in Central Florida, but throughout the state because we also do teletherapy. And the type of clients I see, it's about holistic mental health services, holistic sexuality services as well. So the people who actually reach out to my office, and I'm so proud to be able to say this, is um, come from a diverse background. And that's intentional for my office. So we have people who diverse in sexuality, diverse in their gender identity, um, cis women, cis men across the board. They're coming to the office because of things from anxiety to depression to sex therapy, sexuality education, want to enhance intimacy and orgasms in their relationship. The spectrum is broad. And I'm so glad that I'm able to work with them and have other clinicians as well at the office now who can provide similar services.
So, how did you get into this
Yeah.
space? What your mama say when you tell her?
Oh, Auntie. So when I first, that's a great question. When I first started off, it was, I mean, you can imagine, I'm coming from this small town in Virginia, the small Petersburg, Virginia, and no one even talked about sex. So for me to get to the point in my life where I was very vocal that I wanted to study it intentionally,
Hmm.
the looks that I received, like the names, people just, they instantly went in another direction. I think mom handled it well. She was quiet and just, okay. Um,
That's what
but
they say to us when they don't know what to
Right.
say.
yes, yes. But now that she knows fully what I do, now she's on board. And so the good thing is, as a sexuality educator, when I'm providing education, I can help people across the country, all over the world.
Mm.
For the therapeutic clinical piece, my
Hmm.
license is in Florida, and so I do more the therapy component in Florida. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
how
One of
long have, oh, I was gonna ask a question. So how many years of experience would you say you have in the field? And is there a portion of your practice that you're really passionate about that really kind of excites you?
Yeah. So I've been officially deemed able to do this work, like degreed and licensed. Gosh, I'm gonna date myself. Um, since 2002. So
Okay.
like licensed, kind of doing work. But I started off so early when I realized in my own community that people were coming to me, people were coming to me with questions in middle school, high school, college, like
Hmm.
they had anal sex and tried to figure out if they were pregnant. And I was like, oh, let's talk. Let's talk,
Yeah.
just anatomy. Like
Yeah.
let's just kind of have a
Yeah.
conversation. And when I knew that I could have those types of conversations, I started studying on my own so that I could help my friends. It
Mm.
really started that way.
Mm.
And then, of course, I learned that from Dr. Ruth. So I'm going to date myself, but Auntie, you know,
Yes.
Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Yes.
Yes. I used to sneak to listen to her show, because my mother, although my mom was probably a lot more relaxed than my grandmother would have. I don't know who was more relaxed, but anyway, I used to sneak to listen to her show, and that's where I learned a lot, because my mother, like growing up, my mother didn't really talk to me about sex or sexuality. I had my class at school,
Mm-hmm.
and that was all about your menstrual cycle, really. And
Mhm.
this was even before, like my brother has done this work in the school system when he lived in St. Louis. They weren't talking about condoms. They were not talking about birth control when I was in school. So this was like in the 80s. They were not doing any of that. And so I learned from Dr. Ruth, just like you. So that's why I was going to ask you, like, where did you get the information from if you were so
Yeah.
young?
Yeah.
It started with Dr. Ruth. I was so enamored by this little Jewish lady. Like I later learned out she was Jewish. This
She's so
little
little.
Jewish lady with this little squeaky voice. And she had, little curly fro kind of.
She sure
And
did.
she would talk to people on TV like, in the penis, in the vagina. And I was like, how is she doing this? From coming from a town where no, like people literally got pregnant by immaculate conception where I live. Like no one talked about
Wow.
No.
any of it. So it started there. And I
Yeah.
would go to the library, and I have always been a nerd, and I would go into the book section about sex, and I would flip
Mm-hmm.
through and I would read. It started there, like literally around middle school. I started
Mm.
self-teaching and just
Yeah.
kept going. Yeah.
I remember getting caught with the encyclopedia, with the S of encyclopedia, looking up sex in the encyclopedia, which is so interesting because now, children can just type in the word sex online on their devices, and if they don't have parental controls,
Yeah.
and learn so much more than that paragraph that was in
The
encyclopedia,
Britannica
right?
encyclopedia.
than what I learned. So, what is one of
Botanica.
the, have you ever had a client come to you and you were just completely shocked by what you heard, or, something that was so traumatic, that you've had to work with the client? Because I find it interesting that people are so open now
Mhm.
talking
Yeah.
about sex, and maybe this is a generalization on my part, so open now to talk about, sex and sexuality.
hmm Um, 100% honesty, I have not had anyone that I've talked to, worked with up to this point in my life that has shared anything that shocked me at
Okay.
all. Um, and I am, Trey, earlier you asked me,
Yep.
what excites me the most, like what types of, that's what excites me when I have someone come in and they have spent their lifetime with their voice silent about
Mm.
their sexual interests, their sexual needs, their sexual desires. They have been in relationships, they have been married, they are married, and my office, my space, my ears are the first that's hearing the truth of their story,
Mm.
how they feel. That's what excites me. That's what invigorates me. That's what keeps me going, because each time I also teach as well, and I've taught sexuality classes for a long time, and every time I do it I realize I'm reaching a new population who
Mhm.
doesn't know what it feels like to be free in their own bodies, and to be affirmed for their identity and their worth just as they are. That's such a passion of mine. So anytime someone comes in and says, I've never said this before. I've never said this out loud. And they'll even say, like in the therapy office, confidentiality, they'll say, between you and me. Like, nobody, I can't, you know? That's everything to me. And I honor it. I honor being able to be a part of that journey.
But that tells you a lot about, our society. I'm sorry, Trey. I know
Go
I'm
ahead. I
talking a
was
lot.
about
I'm
go
so
ahead. You
excited.
go ahead. I know you're excited. I
Um,
am too. I'm gonna get my questions in. Don't worry.
so that tells you a lot about, and this is a belief system that Trey and I share, is how important it is to have someone that you can talk to about things that you, when you can't talk to anyone else. And we are huge proponents of therapy
Hmm.
and counseling and coaching, And so this is why we're also really excited to have you on the show today, to talk to us, to encourage people that even this, even your sexuality, is something you should be able to bring to your therapist, or either you need to find a therapist so that you can talk through some of these things where you feel safe.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so my question was, you talked about working with different populations. Have you noticed, is there like not a ripe age, but is there like an age in which you see people kind of really embracing maybe mental health or coming to see a therapist? Is it kind of maybe once they're past 18, or they might not be in their parent or guardian's home? Have you seen it before, kind of the age of 18? What are you seeing kind of in terms of when your patients are really embracing this? Have you seen any trends?
That is a great question. And I would say yes, that it is actually when people, um, not only when they are kind of 18, but I see it happen more once they leave their environment of familiarity or comfort, whatever
Mm,
that is. So usually if they have gone away to college, then after they've gone away, they realize this whole other world exists, and how they have been perceiving themselves in that world. There may be a conflict, and then there's help for that. Then they seek me out. And it literally, I can talk to them and hear that process. For
mm,
many people, it varies when that happens. So for some, it might be when they go off to college. Some people don't have that breakaway experience from
right.
community and awareness until much later in life,
Gotcha.
much later in life. And usually when that happens and they come in and they realize that this was available, I always hear, I should have done this earlier.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I bet. So let's get into relationships and dating a little bit. So that's what
yeah.
we're going to talk about that today, because we want to get some of y'all out these situationships. Is that still a thing? Because I learned that from some of
Yes.
Trey's friends.
Trace friends, yeah. No, it's definitely still a term that's being used, and so we might have to break what a situation ship down is. What's your definition, Auntie?
When you don't know what's going on with you and
Okay,
this person that you
but
spend
when
all
you
this
don't know what's
time
going
with,
on, but something going on,
yeah, something's happening, but you
something
don't
going
know.
on, but you don't know what's going
So we're gonna let Dr. Tameca tell us. So, Dr. Tameca, what do you see in the dating area in with young people dating before 30? Are there any things that you see that are common themes or concerns?
Yep. The common themes, concerns that are out there primarily are, there is the comparison. So before 30, what I see and what I mean by the comparison, there's this constant need of people to compare, especially women, to compare where they are in their lives to other women, especially with relationships. So they're on social media, they're on Instagram, they're on all these things now, TikTok, and they're seeing all these things happening. People are bunned up, booed up, they're on in Aruba, they're like doing all the things. And
Mhm.
so they're feeling like their lives are void. They don't have a partner. If they do have a partner, their partner isn't taking them to do all these amazing things. So they get caught in the trap of comparison, not really understanding all that's behind the photo. They just see the photo and they're trying to live up to the photo. So that's one thing that I've seen a lot, in a theme that's coming out. Um, and the other thing that I see that is really pervasive for those under 30 is, kind of, I call it the failure syndrome, and it's the failing to be authentic.
on?
So they desire to be, usually out of the comparison, or because family dynamics or media movies tell you you're supposed to be in a relationship. They're doing so much of changing who they are to fit what a partner wants, that they're not being authentic to themselves. And so many times they're in relationships that are unhappy, and they want the person to change. But the fact of the matter is, when they started the relationship, they weren't authentic with themselves. So the
Mm,
partner was like, I like to go out every weekend. I like to turn up, like, yeah, get money, like, and
yeah.
they met them out at a club. So they're like, yeah, but but inside they're the type of person who would be fine at home every day, weekends too, reading a book or going to the park. That's what they authentically want to do. But because they wanted it to be booed up so bad, and this was their opportunity, now they out every weekend and miserable.
Exhausted. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
No, that's a great question. I think you kind of hinted to maybe, especially with women, maybe comparing themselves with social media. I'm gonna make sure the guy's perspective is brought. Is there anything with any, maybe your male clients or any that you see any kind of trends before 30 that you want to talk about?
Yes.
Okay.
For guys, for
Oh boy.
guys, yeah,
We got a
because it's
big old yes.
Right.
yeah, because it's
For
such a
sure.
thing. Yes, it's such a thing, and it always weighs heavy on my heart. For guys, they are always coming with this feeling that they are responsible for being the provider. They have so much on their shoulders about they got to make it happen. They got to make it do what it do. Like
Yeah.
no matter what they're sacrificing. So not only do they have to be the provider, they have to show up physically in a certain way. They also can't be like quote unquote punks, like they use those words to their boys. So they got to be able to showboat a little bit and make sure they're not too deep in with this girl, because they got to be able to, like, there's so much they're navigating socially.
Yeah.
And when I talk to them one on one, it's like, man, I love that girl. I just wanna, you know, they just wanna, they know who they want, they know who they want to be with, but they don't feel adequate.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough yet. They don't have enough money. They haven't arrived at this whatever this imaginary status is they have.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Which I think
deep.
is so unfair because there was a young lady I was talking to and she was telling me all these things she wanted in a guy, him to be, confident and be established in his career, to have money, to have this. I mean, she had a really long list. And I said, oh, so you like dating older men? Like she's in her 20s. And she was like,
Mhm.
well, no, I want to date someone my age. I said, well, he won't have those things. I said, do you have those things? Like you have to think about it.
Yep.
If you're
Mhm.
26, he's 26. Just because he is a man does not mean that his 26 is different significantly than yours.
Mhm.
And I think that's where some of that pressure goes on. And I think a lot of women don't realize that they're putting that sort of pressure on their man. But you guys are the same age. If you want that list, and you probably should be dating a 40-year-old man because it's going to take him, another 15 years to get to what you are looking for. She wants somebody to, open every jar and know how to talk to a contractor. Like, when the last time he negotiated something with a contractor? So I think to your point, and I think so how can we get men and women to be more open in conversation about those pressures?
Yeah.
How can they do that in the dating process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, part of that is really getting rid of what I call those social scripts of what things are supposed to be. A lot of times we learn those things at home. So there are grandmas and aunties and uncles and everybody saying in a girl's ear, their man ain't about nothing. He ain't no good. He don't have a job. He don't have all these things. So the messaging becomes, if I'm with a guy, when I get with him, he must already have established himself at a certain level. He can't be living at home with his parents. He can, even though his decision might be one to help him save money so that he can get to where he needs to go, he's immediately like pushed aside. So a lot of it is getting rid of those social scripts and just being up again. I always push this when I'm talking to individuals is about being authentic. If you kind of like what you said, Auntie, you want someone to come to the table with something. I often ask, what are you willing to meet them at the table with? And sometimes that becomes, well, I'm all that anyway. They fortunate to be with me. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful and great self-esteem. And I'm big up in it. And that's awesome. But a partnership is a partnership. And so being willing to say, okay, here are the things that I'm looking for. Here are the things that I desire. Where are you in your process of going in that direction versus do you have these things right now? Where are you in your process? What are your goals? What are your vision? Are different conversations to have
Mhm.
versus immediately scrapping somebody because they're not already fully established. Caveat being, but if that's what you desire, that's what you desire. So you also need to be authentic about what your desires are.
Yeah.
And so you've kind of brought up some conversations that will need to happen, or some self-reflection that will need to happen as well. So kind of from a timeline perspective. So talk about when you first start getting to know someone, you meet them, you're going through the dating process. What are the best times to have these conversations with yourself and then kind of with the other person? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Hmm. Okay, I had to pause because
That's
it
all right.
depends. Yeah, because it depends on your reason for dating. So
Okay.
people have different reasons for dating. So first, before you start dating, you want to ask yourself, what am I looking for? Before you even start dating, you need to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something? Are you looking for a relationship?
Hmm.
If you're looking for a relationship, what does the relationship mean to you? Like, you really want to be clear about that.
Right.
And so that you can put that out there. Are you looking to connect with someone, find what you have in common, spend days and time together, work towards a possible future together, longevity, monogamous? Like, is that where you are? Or are you looking for, I don't want to really be alone on the weekends. I want someone to hang out with.
Right.
Or are you looking for, I want someone to call when I need to make a call? Like, be honest about wherever you are in that
Hmm.
process. And then in the beginning, my thing is always in the beginning, say what you mean and mean what you say.
I have heard a lot of women, Tameca, say that they don't want to
Hmm.
tell a guy that they're looking for a committed, monogamous relationship that's going to lead to marriage because they're afraid that he is going to like bounce. He's gonna be like, I'm out. That's not what I want. Should they still be honest if they're still attracted to this person? Should they hold back those true desires at any point just to see?
Yeah, great question. If you know that you desire to have a committed relationship with someone, be honest and let them know. If you're afraid that they're going to bounce because of that, then their bouncing is a good thing for you because what you need, they're not able to provide. So save yourself both time. And what
And
usually
hurt.
happens, yeah, what usually happens is they try to hold that back for fear that they're going to leave and then do all the things that are inauthentic to themselves
Mm.
to try to
Yeah.
show that this is why you should change your mind and consider committing. And when you commit, I'm the one because I'll do all
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah.
Um, so what's the fear of being honest up front and letting somebody tell you up front whether they can or cannot fulfill your desires? That that's actually a great thing to do. I encourage it all the time.
And I got a question too. So this is kind of gonna be maybe from a brother's perspective, or maybe give some guidance. So say, or anyone, say for instance, there is someone who is not looking for something serious. The conversation has come up. They might not necessarily be looking to be in a monogamous relationship at the time. Um, do they have a responsibility? What is their role in this now? Do
Hmm.
they um, do they need to communicate verbally what their wants and their desires are? Do their actions need to be consistent? Like what happens? How does, sometimes I feel like that's when the situationship starts, is when it gets messy, when words and actions might not be um, uh, in like congruent. So can you speak about that, like words and actions, and meaning what you say and saying what you mean?
Yeah, people are scared to talk, Trey. I don't know. I do get it, in the therapeutic world, I do get it. But there's so much power that happens when people just communicate with each other.
Hmm.
And you're exactly right. That's what happens. And so, what should happen is, you don't really want a relationship,
Yep.
but you like her.
Hmm. You don't want to be
And
alone.
yeah, and you
Okay.
want to do the things, you want to
Yep.
do all the things. So, y'all hang out and you do the things. What you should do is communicate that in the beginning. I'm
Right.
not looking for a relationship. I am interested in you. I do like you. I want to hang out, but I know right now that's not what I'm looking for. Now, let's just say he says that,
Yep.
she has every right and should say, we've been doing this hanging out thing for the past 2 or 3 months. You want to come over every weekend. You want to do this and do that. Here are my boundaries. So if we're not
Gotcha.
going towards a relationship, then this is the limit of what
Right.
I'm willing to do with you. Like,
And
we can't hang out
boundaries,
every weekend.
and it can
Mhm.
change, right? It can progress.
Yes,
So I think
Yeah.
yes,
that's, so can you speak about that, like checking in and making
But he
sure,
still got
okay,
to have a conversation, right? Because
agreed. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
yeah,
That's the
that's
whole
the big
thing.
thing.
Have
Yeah.
a conversation, because with her saying that, for instance, in this same scenario, he
Yep.
might come back and say, well, when we started, that's where I was. But since I've been hanging out with you, I'm kind of feeling a little different. And she could
Right.
go, oh, well, thanks for letting me know, because I was still operating like this is not where we were going. So
Yep.
the boundaries, the lines, they can all move and shift,
Hmm.
but you have to communicate about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
And it just saves you so much heartache and mental and emotional anxiety and stress. I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
comes up in the relationships is if I want to know something and something concerns me, I'm bothered by something,
Hmm.
but I'm afraid to have the conversation either because I don't want to have conflict or I don't want to get my feelings hurt because he might not say what I want him to say. And I don't know if this is true, but if you feel like he's not going to say what you want him to say, he probably not going to say what you want him to say.
Yeah.
Is that
Oftentimes,
true?
yeah, oftentimes I tell people, if you're feeling like, when you're in a relationship, if you feel like you can't use your voice, it's for one or two reasons. One, historically, life has taught you that when you use your voice, there's a negative consequence. So
Mhm.
you've used the silence, you become used to silence in your voice. It doesn't mean that your current context, the current relationship won't support the use of your voice, but internally, you've
Mm.
internalized that you're not able to speak your truth and use your voice. So that's something that through therapy with support you can be assisted with. The other reason people often don't use their voices because they feel like in their current context they're not safe to use their voice, and safety has a broad meaning.
Mm.
So it could mean that I've learned that when I speak up, when I say what I want, when I use my voice, that we're going to have an argument. There's going to be a conflict. Such and such is going to shut down. Whatever it is, it's going to be a consequence that doesn't feel inviting to continue to use your voice. So then you end up with people walking on eggshells or not saying what they need to say. And that's the number one reasons that relationships have demise.
Mm.
Yeah, but
Yeah. And you've talked about kind of, people's intentions or reasons for getting in relationships. One example, you said potentially loneliness.
Yeah.
And just thinking about like COVID-19 and having the social distance. A lot of our peers, Shauna and I, like they're in relationships now. So we get in, everybody asking for a plus one to the wedding now because relationships have either accelerated or manifested for whatever reason. But can you talk a little bit about kind of how, and I'm not sure if you have any clients that have dealt or struggled with this, but how COVID-19 is impacting our ability to be in relationship and how it's impacted dating, I guess for the better or for the worse.
Yeah. So what was interesting when COVID-19 first hit the scene, um, people who were dating were really petrified about it.
Mm.
The experiences that I had with clients that I work with and people that I know, it was, how am I going to meet people? I can't even get connected to them. What am I going to do? And then, of course, they learned technology, navigation, and navigating technology. And then shortly thereafter, they were like, COVID, no COVID, we making this happen.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
COVID was not a factor. People were just coughing together. They
Oh
were like,
yeah.
we're
yeah.
going to make it do what it do.
Right.
So that's what I saw happen for
Okay.
dating. With relationships, I saw that when people were required to be together, to
Mm-hmm.
be present together, some of the cracks were highlighted in the
Mm.
relationship. They could no longer make the excuse, if I got to go to work, I got to go do. You could only be. and be
Yeah.
present. And now that
Yeah.
you're present, what do you do? And so
Yeah.
that was impactful for
No,
people.
They
that's
found
real.
out
And
they didn't like each other.
Mm,
yeah, or I would say
yeah.
just, it was a culture shift for all of us. I definitely talked about it, before, like, being away from my wife for 8, 9 hours, and now we're both working together in a small 1-bedroom apartment. So spending that much time with each other, the conversation of what's for lunch, we never had to have that conversation. Now we both here for lunch and we're asking each other, what's for lunch, who's cooking, where are we going? So I completely agree. Like, whether you were in the dating or relationship, if there was someone in the picture, that brought one set of potential, the set of different circumstances versus, if, even if you were single. So
And I
Yeah.
think, that should be a learning lesson for people around dating, is really getting to a place where you spend enough time with someone to get to know if you really like them. Right? It's one thing to be attracted to, it's another thing to be infatuated by. It's something else to be passionate about physically, but then you have to realize, do we actually like one another? Like how you talk to me, like
mhm.
how you handle stress, get to see them in different situations, I believe. Right? If you only have been with someone and y'all only see each other happy, you've never seen the other person angry or upset, or am I really old school about that? Because I want to see how you act when you mad, and I hate to play games. But when we don't get to see, my grandparents used to say, in the different seasons. So what do you think about
Mm.
that, Dr. Tameca? Like the seasons of life that you get to see people in. Is that important in the dating process?
It is important in the dating process to be able to observe how that goes. And I kind of go a little bit further and say, even in your observation, are you willing to acknowledge it for its truth? Kind of how Maya Angelou says, when people show you who they are, believe them.
Mhm.
So sometimes even in the dating phase, when we see things that clearly say, okay, I'm spending time with this person, and I realize that after the honeymoon phase, all they want to do is play on their PlayStation all day long. Like every spare moment, that's all they want to do. And when I try to say something, it annoys them. And then they'll say to themselves, oh, but that's probably just for now. Once we really get together, once we get married, once we have a family, this will change. Mm-mm. And they
Yeah.
usually don't say anything. So, yes, it's important to observe it through the seasons. I, that's great. I support that. And believe what you see. And
No,
if you have
yeah,
concerns about it, use your voice and speak about it.
I definitely agree. It's funny. Shauna and I, we used to watch the Black Love series on the OWN network.
Oh
And
yeah.
Hmm.
that was something that really resonated with both of us. I think it was Viola Davis was saying, if this person never changes a day in their life, like, can you accept them and love them through that? So
Mhm.
behaviors, whatever it is, mannerisms, personality, if they never change, like, could you accept them and love them through that? So
Yeah.
no, that was definitely critical. And then you
Hmm.
talked about, um, just kind of what to be mindful of. Are there any red flags? Like, no, turn away, like, don't pass go, don't
Run.
collect $200, run. Like, are there any red flags in a relationship where it's just like, yeah, this is something that it rubbed me the wrong way. It might, let me not try to justify this. This is a sign that I need to, like, this is over, or I need to try to
Yeah,
get out of this.
yeah. There are many red flags. There are numerous red flags. And I'll just be honest about that. There are
Yeah.
numerous red flags. The red flags are not about the people, about kind of this person is bad or this, like, run away from this person. It's more about know yourself and know your capacity and what you're willing to deal with, tolerate, and what you're not willing to deal with and tolerate.
Mm,
You have to know yourself in the process. And knowing yourself, then you can identify the red flag. So for
Mm.
instance, if you know that you have a pet peeve about cleanliness, you know that you do,
yeah.
and you're dating someone, you're hanging with someone, you get in their car is a mess, you go visit their place is a mess, like all the time, you know that's going to bother you.
Yeah.
So why set yourself up for that and expect this person to just clean, or then say, you know what, they cute. I'll just work around that. I'll clean. I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And then we're 6 months or 6 years in, and you're in the therapist's office yelling about the fact that you got to clean all the time.
Right. And he'd be
Yeah.
like, well, I thought you liked cleaning.
Right.
That's what I
Exactly.
thought, you know.
Exactly. So that's
Hmm.
really where I say the red flags are. Yeah.
Okay.
What would you say even further down the road in a red flag?
Yeah.
I've read quite a few articles that talked about dating abuse.
Mm,
And some of them were more extreme than others. And I know and I agree with you, this kind of knowing yourself. Like I grew up in a household where there was not a lot of yelling. Like my mother wasn't, she didn't curse, and this is not a judgment on anybody, but it's just,
mhm,
you know, that we just, the kids, we argue, but the adults, we didn't see that.
mhm,
And so I know when I first started dating, I had a hard time working through disagreement and argument, because I immediately felt like it made me uncomfortable.
Hmm.
It was like, why are we arguing? Are we about to break up? And I used to feel like that a lot before I turned 30 and didn't understand
mhm,
that. But I think there's this piece too that kind of, because I've had friends who were in abusive relationships. So
mhm.
are there any things that you would see that women and men should be particularly concerned about as it pertains to their safety around verbal and physical abuse?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yes, so with those, there are some very specific things. First and foremost, it's when I'm with this person, do I feel safe? Like that's just a question to ask yourself. Like when I'm with this person, do I feel safe in my skin? Do I feel comfortable around them? Am I constantly on edge? Am I afraid that something's going to happen? If I say something, I may know that this person will never raise a hand to me, but if I say something or do something wrong, will they insult me? How are they going to treat me out in public? Things like that. Um, Also, if you find that you are constantly financially giving and supporting and expected to do that, and if you
Mm.
don't, there's a negative consequence, but you're not getting any benefit from that. We have financial abuse, we have emotional abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse that happens in
Mhm.
relationships that people with your partner that you have consented with to have sex with. But it's also an experience that if you don't, then there's a negative consequence where they are angry with you, they are frustrated with you, they don't want to talk to you, they shut down from you, they do something else. That's a form of manipulation and that's a form of
Mhm.
abuse, because at this point it's have sex with me or else. That's the undercurrent, and oftentimes people don't recognize that within relationships
Mm.
there can be sexual assault, sexual abuse, even if you've previously consented. If it's something that you don't feel like doing and someone forces you to do that, that's an assault. And so those are things to be mindful of and aware of. And the other really key flag is when people are attempting to isolate. So if you're in a
Mm.
relationship and your partner doesn't want you to hang out with other people, they start to kind of pull you away from family and pull you away from friends, that's a red flag as well.
Yeah, run, run, run. Because I would hate for any of our nieces and nephews. I think a lot
Right.
of times we
Cousins,
think
anyone.
about
Yeah.
abuse from the standpoint of a man abusing a woman. But there are men who may not even want to call it that, right? Because
Yeah.
of masculinity and
Hmm.
pride, but they can. And I also, I talked about, dating abuse. I meant that even for all types of couple formations.
Yeah.
I was talking with a friend, he's gay, and he was talking about the high percentage of abuse in the gay community.
Mm.
And I was shocked. But I don't know
Hmm.
why I was, but I was shocked by that.
Yeah, it's very high in marginalized communities, even more so because they feel that they can't report because there's
Mm.
already stigma. So if you are someone who is LGBTQ plus identified, if you are someone who is in a poly relationship, if you engage in kink, if you are someone who is undocumented, there are a variety of ways that you feel that you can't say anything or do anything because externally or in other aspects, you're already marginalized, disenfranchised, and you don't feel like you're going to be supported. So oftentimes people feel stuck dealing with the relationship or risk hearing other people say, well, you shouldn't be in that or doing that anyway. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, you know, I feel like I need of a dictionary. So I heard you use a word that I'm not familiar with. What is
Hmm. Oh, okay.
I've never heard that term
Sorry.
before. Can we
Sorry.
explain that on the podcast?
Yeah,
We
it's your
can.
podcast.
Go
We
Yeah.
ahead.
can. We
Um,
can.
so kink is a term that some people use when describing engaging in sexual behaviors that may be different from, I don't use this word. I don't often use this word, but I'm just going to use it for the audience for comparison.
Hmm.
So, engaging in behaviors that differ from the norm. Therapists, we don't really like to use that word because norm is a bell curve with median, median, and mode, and that's a whole other thing. But when you think about society,
Hmm.
kink might be, for instance, your sadomasochism. So
Okay.
something people are familiar with, your S&M.
Yeah.
That might be some bondage, that may be some, and it goes further and it goes
Levels. Yeah.
broader, yeah,
Mhm.
wider. So there are a variety of things in the kink community that people participate in, but they feel like they can't speak about it or be open about it because they'll be judged for what they're into, what they
Hmm.
do, and what they enjoy.
That was all the stuff that they used to show on HBO's Real Sex. That's what just popped in my head. Like, oh, those. And I would sit there and be like, "Oh, people do that? Oh my gosh," because with no judgment, just shock. Like, it's
Yeah,
so much I don't know. So
yeah.
I want to talk about one other thing before we end,
I
this
got another question,
relation.
but go
Okay, well, we
ahead.
might not end the show,
Yeah.
y'all. Y'all
Yeah.
might get part 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So I'm thinking a little bit about compatibility
Mm-hmm.
in dating. So we've talked about a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, but we really had, things to be aware of and concerned about. And but when you think about compatibility, I have this thing around, two concepts that I like for you to address when it comes to compatibility. Family relationship backgrounds and dynamics, like do
Mhm.
certain people um connect better because they have similarities. Like if you grew up in a family that was married versus, a single mother or abuse or things like that. And then the other is related to energy. These concepts around masculine and feminine energy, and when couples come together with same or opposing energy, which ones are most compatible? Or is there a such thing as
Yeah.
compatibility?
Yeah,
That was a
there
lot. I
is.
know. I'm sorry.
There is, and this is a whole topic on its own, that really people find very interesting. And I'm going to be doing some work on this later. But so part of it, yes, of course, yes. If you're coming from similar backgrounds, you can understand each other, and you have less description that you have to do in understanding each other's family and background. So if you're from a family that they're loud, they get together all the time, and your family does the same thing, then when y'all get together, you get it, you understand it. Versus if you come from a more muted family and you're with this loud family, and every time you go around, you're like, then it's kind of working through that. So background can be helpful, but I find that people from diverse and mixed backgrounds, absolutely compatible, wonderful relationships. What impacts it more is getting to a little bit of what you're talking about, Auntie Jeannine, which is the energy. In the therapy education world, we're looking at styles of connection. So we're looking at your love style, we're looking at your attachment style, we're looking at your love language. We're kind of putting some of those things together. And there are some of those that go better together than others. It still doesn't mean that you're not
Mhm.
compatible. What it means is that you have to understand the other person's love style, the other person's love language, the other person's attachment style. You have to understand yours and the other person, and then how they will work together. But usually, what happens is the styles are different enough that each person is looking at the other person like they're wrong and they need to come over to their style.
Mhm.
And that's where the conflict ensues. Once you break it down and help people understand how they show up, and I say, how do you show up as a love being? Once people understand how they show up as a love being, then they can communicate that style to the other person. And then the energies can learn to intertwine together and it becomes a beautiful thing. So I've seen that happen multiple times with understanding and patience.
And you brought up love languages, and I'm gonna put a plug here because we actually did the apologies language, and a
Yeah.
lot of people don't hear about that. But can you talk about the apology language just a little bit, so people, that's another, I think, level of understanding as well.
Yes, the apology language, thanks Trey, is huge
Yeah.
because people focus so much on the good times, they don't
Yep.
realize how to engage when things aren't going so well. And we all have a way that we interpret I'm sorry and the authenticity of that. And so the apology language is a quiz that you can take just like the love language
Yep.
quiz. It's free online. So just type in love language. When you go to the love language website, you can take the love language quiz for free. There's also a tab to take your apology language, and there it will describe to you, once you answer, how do you like to be apologized to?
Yep.
And that is so helpful because for some people, they want to hear, I'm sorry, I was wrong for what I did. Moving forward, I plan to. Some people want to hear that. Some people just want to hear, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. They don't want you to go into the extra because that gets into an excuse and then they're like, So that's
Some
important to
people
know.
want restitution.
Yes.
Make me whole.
Make me whole.
Make me whole.
Over and over again.
Come on. Come on now. Yes.
Yes, yes. So knowing your apology language is
Yeah.
good. And I'll just kind of put that plug in there and say this is good for parents and children to do as well. Because oftentimes in relationships, especially if you're bringing together mixed families, it's good to know how you relate to each other and how to apologize to each other. Some conflicts in relationships happen out of conflicts in the family unit, and can be good to use.
So you're touching on family, and I know that this was a part of our kind of premarital counseling. What role should family play in a relationship? When should they be introduced? How do you bring family into kind of what you're building with one person, or should it even matter at all?
And before you answer, Dr. Tameca, because we were on Clubhouse, remember, Trey? We did that room on Clubhouse, and we had more people talk about the impact and the stress that their parents pressure around their relationships, primarily to expedite to marriage, was on them. And I thought it was just so strange. I'm like, you're so young, you're in your 20s. No offense to people who are, but even Trey and I talked about this, like, Sean is young. Are you sure? And when I got to meet Sean, and I was like, oh, she's pretty mature for, her age now. And, but I was the opposite. Like, y'all sure y'all ready? Like, slow down. You sure? But to hear parents, so to Trey's question, like, how do you handle your parents when you're dating?
Yeah, this is a tough one sometimes for people. First, when you're dating, if you know you're going toward the phase where you want to be in something long term, be honest about the role that family plays in your life. If you have a very involved family, please let the person know that you have a very involved family at the beginning. Like, let them know. The other person might get it and understand. Or the other person may not understand at all because of the type of family they came from, where there was not that intermingling. So it's important to get that out in the beginning. When it comes to, all right, we're ready, my family has a role, we're ready to introduce one another. Before you introduce, you and your partner have to be on the same page and have an understanding about your expectations. Who are you as a couple? What are your boundaries as a couple? You are dating each other. You're not dating your families. And so when you are on the same page and you have a clear definition, then when you talk to your families, you're giving the same message. They know the boundaries. You have to set those boundaries. If you don't set those boundaries, your family's going to set them for you. That's really important.
Yeah, so y'all better speak up. I think, oh my gosh, this show has been so good. It has been so good.
I got more topic. You got something?
We got free relationship
Right.
advice today. Thank you, Dr. Tameca. I think,
You're
you know,
welcome.
we are going to be back next week.
We are.
We're coming back next week. So y'all listen, or either you started listening, you might want to hold out so you can get the whole package all at
The
once.
whole package.
But I hope y'all were taking notes because she took us to school.
She did.
Took us to school. So we want y'all to come back next week because it's part of our love and relationship series. The second part of this conversation we're going to get into is love and sex, like kind of getting into a lot more detail about, you know, when to enter into a sexual relationship with someone that you're dating or that you've met, or what does it mean, right? Does it, is it what Trey always tells me, a social construct? Like it's just all made up, just made up.
Yeah.
So Trey, let's Dr. Tameca, tell our audience how they can get in touch with you. If you have a website, the name of your practice, so if they
All
want
that
to
good
reach
jazz.
out, they can reach out to you.
Sure, yeah. So the name of my practice is Hope and Serenity Health Services. And you can find me on the my website is hopeserenityhealth.com. And also I'm on Facebook as well, Instagram, Twitter, even though I'm still learning how to work those things. So, but you can find me on there, absolutely. So
Well,
feel
we
free to
want
reach
y'all
out.
to slide
Yes.
into her DMs and tell her how
Yes.
wonderful this conversation was. And if you
Yes.
learned something, let us all know.
And I'm letting y'all know now, reach out sooner than later. Word on the street, Dr. Tameca be booking quick. So reach out now. Okay.
Right. And, you know, when we all get a chance to gather in person or through one of our virtual events in the future, we would love to have you back, Dr. Tameca, to take some questions from, you know, this audience. They are so much more transparent around these topics than I remember being when I was in my 20s. But I think these are conversations that need to be had. So we want to thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. And I'd love to come back and take some questions.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, we'll be back next week for the second part of our love and relationship conversation, talking about love and sex. And just remember, at before 30, you are a masterpiece and a work in progress.